Well, hello, and thank you for the opportunity to share greetings and words with my brothers and sisters in faith at the American Cathedral in Paris. I almost always say at the beginning of one of these video greetings that I wish we were gathering in person, but you should know that I say that with particular sincerity as I address you right now. And I very much hope that there will be an occasion when soon, safely, I have a chance to greet you in person. But in the meantime, I'm greeting you from here at home in South Bend, Indiana, on the banks of the St. Joseph River. I understand that in France this is a moment or a season called rentrée as we put the vacations behind us and get back to work. And I can almost feel the season calling us. You can see squirrels around the yard here busying themselves in a way they wouldn't a couple of weeks ago, burying acorns. And I think all of us, that first time we feel the cool breeze on the back of our neck, are motivated to step a little more quickly and work a little more toward what's ahead of us. I was also moved to see the readings that were shared for today, a gospel in which we are commanded to think about forgiveness not as something we're supposed to budget and give out a certain amount according to proportion, but as something we're supposed to understand we benefit overwhelmingly from and pay forward as much as we possibly can. And this letter from Paul to the Romans, counseling Christians against getting so absorbed in arguing amongst ourselves that we can't remain rooted in what is most important. And that feels apt for all the arguments amongst ourselves that are happening, certainly in my country and in so many parts of the world. I sometimes imagine now the United States from the perspective of someone sent to assess conditions in a developing country, looking around and seeing how our country, my country right now, is struggling with what might be considered the basics, containing the spread of disease, assuring a functioning democracy, treating ethnic and religious minorities properly and with dignity and in the spirit of equality. Even the onset of forms of political violence. Now, the reality is these reveal fissures and problems and injustices that have been with the United States from before the beginning of our government. But they're on display in a new and troubling way. I think we're all confronting them, especially in this political season. And I know that I'm addressing you not as a political figure, but as a fellow believer. But I think any believer of any political stripe can look at the moment that we're in and see the peril of the temptation to suppose that what we're seeing around us is the result of one evil individual or some evil set of individuals in power. And to believe that's all there is to what's happening would be to let an awful lot of people, to let each of us off the hook in a way that isn't really true to how we got here. There's another temptation I worry about even more, the temptation to imagine the political contests and the social anguish of our moment as a struggle between good people and evil people. And if we can only round up enough of the good people to overpower or outvote the bad people, that's somehow all it would take. Partly because my faith teaches otherwise. I know that that's not the right way to understand this moment. Indeed, I think this is a moment when faith can do a great deal for all of us, especially Americans, because of a reminder of the different sides of the soul, of the ways in which each of us is tempted, the ways in which each of us can and does offer both good and harm into the world, that each of us is called to higher and lower places. And those calls can come from within. And those calls, the good ones and the bad ones, can certainly come from without. They can certainly come from political figures, though not only from political figures. Either calling out to what is best in us or calling out to what is worst in us. You know, with echoes of the civil rights movement in our time, I'm thinking to the words of Bayard Rustin, an extraordinary leader instrumental in the civil rights marches of the 1960s taking place, an unsung figure, also a gay leader who was early in the struggle for equality for the LGBTQ community. One thing that he said was that the only way to reduce ugliness in the world is to first reduce it in yourself. And I say that not to castigate on any of us, but as a reminder in all humility that we have a lot of work to do to recognize the struggle within and to recognize the beauty within others and call out to what is best in them. And so it seems to me that this is a moment for us to seek whatever sources we have, whatever we have in our lives that give us access to what calls out the best in us. And in our daily lives, I think more than anything, that comes by way of love. Relationships of love in whatever form, wherever you find it. Those relationships, of course, in so many ways have been cruelly attenuated or even separated by circumstance during the pandemic, and yet they remain such a powerful thing. And the other place we can turn is, of course, to faith, to the Word of God that calls us to remember that we are all created in the divine image, and to recognize in ourselves the idea that what we most have to offer is how we can make ourselves useful to those around us. There's such power in that. There's such promise in that. And that's part of where I place my hope. Let's admit that the 2020s are not off to a great start as decades go. You could argue our century has been off to a very troubled start. But even 2020 itself is a story that has not yet been completed. And I actually think that as we embark on a decade whose unfolding may well be decisive for my country and for the world, for what it's going to be like to live on this earth for the balance of our days, it will decide what sort of climate and what sort of economy and what sort of society and what sort of international community we are going to be living in. That we should remember also the empowerment that is with us, not just through professional or political work, but in all of the ways that we can reinforce one another in a call to what is best in us. That's where I'm drawing hope right now. And that is not only a call to the light, but it's a call to get to work. And something that I think very much rhymes with the spirit of Entrée. So with that, again, I thank you for the opportunity to share a word with you. I look forward to an opportunity to break bread with you someday. And in the meantime, sending warmest greetings and wishing that you stay well and stay safe.